How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to Before I Forget. This is my video channel inspired by my Instagram channel, 1985 Road Dog. I'm going to get right into it now. No more beating around the bush. This is going to be about being on the road with LA Guns in 1988, kind of a day in the life. I've heard from a lot of people through my Instagram channel that is really what people want to hear about, is a day in the life, what goes on the road, beside the obvious, rock and roll. So 1988, we're probably on a tour bus from 1980, older bus. Bus is, a smelly 12 guys on the bus, 12 people. There's 12 bunks. There's 3, 6, 9, 12 stacked on top of each other, bunks that you sleep in. They're like coffins, really. I mean, if you just jolted awake at night and sat up, you'd bang your head on the top of the ceiling of the coffin above you, So I always tried to be in the middle. It was easy to get in and out of. You didn't want to be on the top and you didn't want to be on the bottom because people would be kicking you as they walk by. So I was trying to be a middle bunk guy. And because I was a road manager, I usually got the bunk that I wanted. But there was a lot of back and forth of who got what bunk, believe me. So we had the 5 guys in the band. We had 6 crew guys and the the merchandise guy that sold the merchandise. Again, this is the first tour, first album on Polygram Records. A big factor in this is the way LA Guns were managed and booked at the time. Their manager at the time was a great guy, Alan Jones, a British guy. He stuck by them all through 1987, became their manager, paid their bills, paid their rents, each guy, supported those guys, got them a record deal, and was really like another member of the band. The negative on Alan was he was not used to being a big time rock and roll manager, in the industry. Polygram at the time was a huge conglomerate. I mean, Polygram's now been absorbed into Universal Music Group, but Polygram at the time had many labels under their umbrella: Mercury, Polydor, Vertigo. LA Guns were on the Vertigo label, part of the Polygram group. But Polygram had big rock bands: Bon Jovi, Kiss, Def Leppard, Scorpions, Cinderella, all on Polygram. And all those bands are managed by big-time rock and roll managers. LA Guns were more of a mom and pop organization, more like a family. Alan was like another member of the band. Everybody was really tight, the band, the crew, the management. It was much more punk rock and indie in their approach as far as the management of a band on Polygram Records. The other thing that affected everything was the booking agent was Risky Business, which is a small booking agency owned and run by a guy named Jim Rissmiller, who's recently passed, rest in peace. Jim Rissmiller was a big LA and big West Coast concert promoter, doing massive, concerts at Dodger Stadium, and massive concert promoter, Jim Rissmiller. Wolf and Rissmiller was the name of the promoter team, and they also owned the club out in California called the Country Club. It was owned by Wolf and Rissmiller. Anyway, so they booked the band. All these other bands that were on Polygram had big booking agencies: ICM, CAA, all the big agencies that booked everybody, not LA Guns. LA Guns had an indie management and an indie booking agent. So that affected how things worked as far as the business structure of the band and everything. So, you're on the road on an old tour bus. Everybody's really excited. It's the first tour. You got 3 guys that really never toured before: Mick Cripps, Kelly Nichols, Tracy Guns. Never toured. This is their first big time. Phil Lewis had been in Girl, and Girl were big in Europe and had done some tours in Japan. So Phil had done some touring. Phil was much more worldly than all these guys. Phil was a little older. I want to say maybe 5, 6, 7 years older than everybody. and had been around the block, much more worldly. I mean, Phil, dated Britt Eklund, who used to be Rod Stewart's girlfriend. I mean, Phil was much more worldly, much more cultured, well-read. He was intelligent, Phil, and he knew how to use all those things to maneuver in the rock and roll underworld. He's a womanizer. I mean, he's Phil Lewis. He's a British lead singer. He was the most rock star of all the guys because he's the singer and he's a British guy. He dated Britt Eklund. So in my eyes, that was big. You're on the road. Steve Riley I forgot Steve. Steve is also 5, 6, 7 years older than everybody else. Steve had been around the block, been in a bunch of bands. Steve was in Wasp. Steve was in the band called the Bees, BZZ. They had a record on Epic. He was in a few other bands that had record deals. Steve had been around the block. So Steve, you had 3 guys that were really hungry to be on the road and go crazy. Well, not crazy, but like to live it up. You had Phil, who was going to use all of his years of being a European pop star and in that world and in that scene in London. He's going to use all that experience and his age difference to kind of like really enjoy himself and become a real LA rocker in a way. But he was going to, Phil was just right place, right time for him. And Steve was the business guy. Steve was married, Steve was always faithful to his wife. I had known Steve from the Wasp days. I met Steve when he was in Wasp. So I had known him going back that far, but we always got along, me and Steve. He's a Boston guy. I'm a New York guy. We just kind of, we got along. We understood each other. And that's what you had. You had 3 hungry guys, new to the game of touring. You had Phil Lewis, who had done some touring, but not like touring America. Touring America is a whole nother ball game than touring Europe and doing Japan a couple times. And Steve had done it all. So that was a little tension with Steve because, if I told the guys, look, we don't have hotels tonight, we're going to sleep on the bus. Steve would not want to do that. Steve would want to be in a hotel. He didn't want just any hotel. He wanted a decent hotel. So, it was all about budgets and, so there was a lot of tension there. I mean, Steve, had to move his room at least once a night. I mean, he was, he couldn't be near an elevator or the soda machine or the ice machine or, if possible, I would put Steve on another floor from the rest of the band because he needed quiet. He had the drapes all drawn. He needed his rest. That was what he needed. So it was always moving Steve's room at least once at every hotel. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, I never really slept. I maybe slept 3-4 hours a night, and it wasn't good sleep. It was very, there was always something waking me up. I was never comfortable trying to go to sleep because there was always some fire that had to be put out somewhere. You usually after the show, you'd get in the bus. Everybody would, first of all, after the gig, I have to get paid. You get usually half the money sent into the office as a deposit, and then you pick up half the money. And sometimes, it usually always went smooth, but sometimes it didn't go smooth. Sometimes, they didn't want to, you always had a guarantee of you're going to get this amount of money no matter what. And then if you do over this many people paid, or you do over this many dollars paid through the door over a certain amount, you got a bonus. So that's where the usually would be a problem with was collecting the overage or the bonus. And again, they didn't have a big booking agency to if you're on ICM and you want a band coming in next month that ICM has, you're not going to screw over anybody that's on ICM because you'll never get any acts. with the booking agent we were with, Risky Business, they really didn't have any big acts. So if they didn't want to pay us or they wanted to screw us, it wasn't that big of a deal because there was no one else on the Risky Business roster these clubs really wanted. So it was tough in that respect. I mean, it got crazy a couple times with picking up money. I mean, threats were made. Weapons were drawn. I mean, that's what had to go down a couple times. I mean, again, this is 1988. There's no video cameras everywhere. There's no, you're in the middle of a club in Iowa somewhere, in a back room, at midnight. If somebody doesn't want to pay you, what are you going to do? The only thing that would make them pay me then would be if there was another band on the booking agency that they didn't want to burn their bridge with the agency. But we were on a small agency, so they didn't care really. I mean, but for the most part, it went smooth. But there were some nights it came down to that kind of stuff. So you'd collect the money, you'd get on the bus. Usually you get on the bus after the show, and there's a party going on the bus, of course. There's music playing, there's too many people on the bus, there's people are smoking, spilling whiskey, spilling beer on the couch, shit's falling out of the refrigerator, the toilet's clogged up, people are in the back lounge in the very back of the bus with the door locked. What's going on in there? Somebody's rifling through a bag in one of the bunks. It's like, this is what went on every night. So I have to get on the bus, basically kick everybody off, listen to the band members pretend, to argue, oh no, she's okay. Meanwhile, they're winking at me like, she can go. I go, no shit, she can go. Everyone's going. So you have to get rid of everybody. Then you get everybody's crap together, make sure everybody's got their bags, nobody left anything behind, and you get on the road and you drive overnight to your next gig. Hopefully it's not too far. I mean, we've driven from one gig to the next, like from New Jersey to Florida or Galveston, Texas to Denver, like 18, 20-hour trips nonstop, and do a gig that night when you get in. So we get on the bus, everybody's listening to music and unwinding, and, but he's, the weed smokers, which were all of the crew smoked weed. Kelly Nichols, Steve Riley were the weed heads, and then they turned me into a weed head through my association with them on this tour. So everyone else was, Tracy didn't do anything, drink or smoke. Phil, who knows what Phil would be doing? There's no telling. Mick could have a beer, or we'd watch a movie, didn't have DVDs at this point, so you're watching VHS tapes. Platoon was a big movie we watched all the time. Of course, The Godfather, Pope of Greenwich Village. And you'd watch movies, and then one by one, everybody, the crew, everybody starts petering out, passing out. Some people made it to their bunk. Some people are sleeping on the couch. Sleeping on a couch that's just been, who knows what liquids are mushed into that couch right now. Not to mention what band member, there's only a couple, but there's only really one band member this could be, but having sex with girls on that couch, and, we had to have that bus steam cleaned at every possible moment. Whenever we had a day off, I'd tell the bus driver, please go get the bus steam cleaned because it smelled so bad. Plus you got people's clothes and shoes, smelly sneakers. The sound man, his sneakers smelled so bad. He would leave them outside the bunk on the floor. His sneakers smelled so bad. We opened the hatch on top of the bus flying down the road and just threw his sneakers out. He was forced the next day to go find something to wear other than those smelly things. So anyway, you'd pull into your, depending on the time of the day or the time of the night or the time of the morning, you'd pull into the hotel or the gig, depending on where you were going. Sometimes you went to the gig and you just slept at the gig. That was very rare. Most of the time we went to the hotel, but sometimes you got to the hotel too early and you couldn't check right in. So everybody was, by the time you pulled into the hotel, everybody's passed out and comatose. So the bus is like, you could hear a mouse walking. It's so quiet when you pull up to the hotel. No matter what time you pull up to the hotel, 2 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night, there's fans there. They're waiting. They want autographs, so I have to deal with that. I have to get everybody's room keys, get the folio from the hotel with the rooming list of who's rooming with who in what room, get all the keys. Then you have to distribute them to everybody. Nobody wants to wake up. Some of the guys would be like, yes, give me my key, and they'd go right to their room. Some guys would just continue to sleep on the bus. Then it depends if you're going to be in the hotel for, sometimes you're just in the hotel for an afternoon for everyone to take a shower, you go to the gig and you leave. Sometimes you have a day off and you're in the hotel for maybe a day, day and a half. So then you'd have to get everybody's luggage up to the rooms. Everybody has luggage with a tag on it, with a number on it. I was number 1, say Tracy was number 2, and everybody had their luggage delivered to their rooms. That took an hour or more. Then you had to move Steve's room, like I was saying, back and forth. So that would go on. You couldn't crash there too long at the hotel because Polygram usually had an in-store record signing set up where the band would go to a store and sign autographs. Big promotion. Again, this is Polygram, big promotional machine. Every city you'd go to a record store and they'd have a big setup and a big display and posters and all kinds of stuff for LA Guns. And guys would sit up at a table and fans would line up and you'd get an autograph. And you'd sold a lot of records. You sold product that way. And cassettes and CDs were just happening too. In '88, CDs were really starting to happen, but cassettes were still the dominant medium. So while these guys are doing their in-store and signing autographs, they've all given me a list of CDs they want. I've got Mick's list, Kelly's list, Tracy's list. These are the CDs they want. So while they're signing autographs, I'm running through the store pulling these CDs for each guy. So each guy would get, 20, 25 CDs. Here's your pile. The store would keep track of, the dollar value of everything. And then they'd tell Polygram, hey, these guys, took for their own personal use, $300 worth of CDs. And then Polygram would reimburse the store with $300 worth of Polygram product, preferably hit stuff like Bon Jovi that actually sold well. So that's how that worked. So you do that in the afternoon, then maybe you'd go back to the hotel, and you then, if it was a gig night, the bus would go to the gig, and either you'd leave after the show or you'd go back to the hotel and leave the next day, depending on how long the drives were, where you were going, and what was going on. But that's what it was every night. I mean, it was very stressful for me because there was always, guys always got in trouble. The crew would get in trouble with things, throwing fluorescent light bulbs out the windows of hotels and breaking them in the parking lot, One of the band members was noted for stealing things all the time. He would walk out on checks at Denny's. He would go to a truck stop and steal all kinds of stuff. He stole a pistol one time from a pawn shop in Texas, and he almost went to federal prison for that. That was crazy because you can't steal a firearm, and especially in Texas. And he stole a pistol, and I had to do a lot of talking to get him out of that. I had to give the guy some cash and other crap, and beg and plead, and got Phil out of that one. I said his name, so there you go. But Phil's talked about that before. Me getting him out of that pawn shop incident. But he liked to lift stuff. I mean, I'd have the cops banging on the door. I'd just gone to sleep, 30 minutes ago, and the cops are banging on the door with a waitress from Denny's. The band guys ran out on a check. So I have to pay the check. I have to give the girl like a $100 bill. I got to give the cops some T-shirts and send them on their way, and then try to go back to sleep. And then, 20 minutes later, the door, be banging on the door again. Somebody's got a girl in their room and she won't leave and they want to get rid of her. So this went on every night. I could talk about this stuff for for days. The stories, but the guys were, pretty easy, I got to say, but there was a lot of stress involved, and a lot of it had to do, like I said, is the way the management and the booking agency were set up. After this first tour and their first album, LA Guns, they switched management, switched booking agents, and now they had a big manager and a big booking agent, and then they did Cocked and Loaded. So that first album first tour was very street, very punk rock. The consequences of things weren't always realized. It was, it's bad on your health. I mean, you eat crappy food. For the band guys, it's awesome. If you're in the band, you're catered to. You really only have to perform for an hour each night. If you're opening in an arena for AC/DC or somebody, you're only playing 30 minutes a night. If you're playing a club, you're playing an hour, hour and a half. So that's all you really have to do. The rest of the time, you can do whatever the hell you want. Yes, you have to go to in-stores and sign autographs, and you have to do whatever, but come on. Easy, man. You're a rock star. For the crew and everyone else, road manager, me, it was stressful. Somebody asked me a question about laundry. What happens with laundry? I go, everybody does their own laundry. You stay in a hotel, and every hotel has a laundry in their hotel, usually. So the band guys would do their own own laundry, or they would pay a roadie to do their laundry, or if you were really powerful, you would coerce a roadie to do your laundry for free. But you did laundry when you could. I mean, sometimes you never did. I think Kelly Nichols, he went like 2 weeks in the same clothes one time. I mean, cleanliness was not important. This is why riding on the bus with all this funk going on was, it's not fun. And then you add cigarettes to the mix. Oh my God, the cigarettes. Everybody smoked. Every fan that came on the bus after the show smoked cigarettes. The bus smelled like a dirty ashtray mixed with whiskey, beer, and sex juice. And piss. That's what that bus smelled like. Anyway, I could ramble. I'll probably do another one of these things because people seem to want to hear about this kind of stuff. Thanks so much. Check out my Instagram, 1985 Road Dog. We'll speak to you soon. Hope all's well. Keep rocking. Bye.